This entire email newsletter, the subject line, introduction, and the curated content was created and sent automatically. No researching, no copying and pasting, no formatting, no writing, just one automation made with OttokKit. Want to see how it works? Let's go. So I'm logged into my account on OttokKit, and we're going to go over to my folders that I've got here, and then we're going to click on the demo. And here is our workflow right here that I'm going to walk you through. It starts with a schedule as a trigger. And right now it's set to every 15 minutes because I'm still currently testing this out. But for you, if you're doing a weekly newsletter or a bi-monthly newsletter, so it'll be every 7 days, you can schedule it every 14 days type of thing. Then we use a service called Scraptio, which grabs an RSS feed and it takes the 10 recent items from the RSS feed. And then we get into OpenAI. That's when that goes to work. So we do a ranking methodology. Then we rewrite those items. Then we format that into HTML syntax for our newsletter. Then we do a welcome intro, and that's also formatted into HTML. Then we create the subject line of our newsletter. Then we update a template in Mailchimp. Then from that updated template, it will create a campaign for us. And then optionally, and I have it in here as functioning, it will automatically send a campaign. So let me go back up to the top here and walk you through this step by step so you can get an idea of how all of this works. So again, the schedule. I've got a core app in here for OttokKit called Schedule, and it does what it says. It schedules out at regular intervals. You can do it only once. You can do every day, days of the week, date of the month. I have it set for every 15 minutes, but in the time span, you could do hours, days, and weeks. So that's the schedule. Once that schedule interval is met, then do all of these actions. And the first action, again, is using a service called Scraptio. So you'll need an API connection. You can get started with a free account. They give you so many credits for a free account. I've signed up for their $3 a month. So I think it gives you only like 500 credits. Create a free account, then set up your API, and then make the connection here into your OttokKit. In the configuration tab, again, I'm using an RSS feed that I set up in RSS.App. This is free to get started, and then I think it's like $10 a month. And the great features with RSS.App is that to create a new feed, you just have to search for a particular topic. So I just did some random stuff here. If I go into my feeds, I did marketing, advertising, email marketing. So these were just keywords that I searched for in the search function right here, and that's what it created. I then combined all of those RSS feeds into what they call a bundle, and then for the customize, I just have the first 10 items, and there are some other options here that you can set up. That's our RSS feed, and that's the URL that's in there. If we click on test, you can see that it pulls in the URL and a description and a title and the date of when it was posted. And that's, again, the only 10 items that it brings in. Okay, so that's what Scraptio does. Then we get into OpenAI, and I do some ranking capabilities here. So if you're not familiar with OpenAI or ChatGPT, you'll need to create an account with OpenAI, and you'll have to put some money in order to use the API connections. And so I've got that set up here. I'll leave a link in the description for you to go check out to learn more about how to set up this type of thing. But once you've got your API connection into your OttokKit, we can go into the configuration tab. I'm using GPT-4o for this. And then I give it a role. So you're an enthusiastic, intelligent chief editor, digital marketing, publication, and newsletter, et cetera, et cetera. And then I give it a task. You'll be given a block of content, which is what Scraptio gives you, that contains 10 URLs to articles from digital marketing publications. So then I give it what it's supposed to do, take this block of content that we get from Scraptio, and then retrieve each news article using the corresponding URL in that block of content, then rate those articles in terms of their significance and potential interest to your large community, which we defined above, which is like-minded digital marketing gurus. You can come up with your own type of community that you can put in here. And then I wanted to rate it 1 to 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the best. And then I try to eliminate a lot of the fluff that comes in with these type of RSS feeds. You know, you get duplicate stories, you've got sponsored posts, self-promoted posts, things that just are fluff pieces, lack depth, those type of thing. That's what I try to avoid. And so far it's doing okay with that. When it has its ranking, I'm going to call that relevance. So how relevant is it to our community of digital marketing gurus? And then I tell it to assign that in its output. And I also ask it to do a rationale why it determined that particular article for that rank. Okay. And then I ask it to supply the link to the news article as well, because we're going to need it in the next step. So that is how I set that up there. If we click on test, so we ran a test, action tested successfully. If we scroll down here, we'll see our output here. I know it might be a little tough to see because it's just putting it in a block of text. You can see here that it provides the title, the relevance, and the rationale with the link. So it does that for all 10 articles. And so that's how that works. Then our next step in our workflow automation here is to only take the articles that rank or have a relevance score of 7 or greater. So again, we're using ChatGPT 4.0 model, and I give it its role again, and then I ask it to create a paragraph length summary and a title based on the complete content of each article that has a relevance factor equal to or greater than 7. And then I put in some description on the type of content that I'm asking for. So I'm asking for clear and straightforward language, free from any marketing or sponsored material, impactful sentences, practical, actionable insights, things like that. And then I ask it to output it in a certain flow here. So I ask it to do title, summary, relevance, and the URL link. And then if we click continue here and click on test action, so action tested successfully. If we scroll down here, we can see here that it's given us a new title, and it's given us a nice short description of what the article is and a relevance score. And it's only giving us this information for any article that has a relevance score 7 or greater with the link. Okay, so that's easy enough. We'll just click save there. Then we want to take our news items and put it into HTML syntax. So this is just easy enough. Go into the configuration tab, again, using the 4.0 model. And then I specify that I want the content that's coming in from the last step, which is the rewrite of the title and the summary with our link. So that's the messaging here right down here. I'm asking it to reformat the content into HTML syntax. So that's using H2 tags, paragraph tags. And then I'm asking it to use the phrase read more when it outputs the HTML for the link. And so you saw that in the very beginning where it said read more after every paragraph. And that's it for that. If I click continue, click on test action, action tested successfully. So we've got our output now. So we've got it in H2 tags, P tags for the paragraph. And then you'll see here we have that read more, which is wrapped around an href, so a link to the original article. And it only does that, again, for articles that have a relevance score of 7 or greater. So we'll click save on that. And then I've asked it to create a welcome introduction. Again, if you're doing this weekly or bi-monthly, it might be a good idea to throw in an intro. And the welcome intro itself is very basic, again, using ChatGPT here. In this case, I'm using 4.0 Mini just for a change. And I'm using the created content in the previous step as the what to base the introduction on. And I'm just asking it for one simple paragraph that encapsulates a weekly digital marketing digest newsletter. I say you can use the title and summary using a short introduction. Paragraphs must be in P tag. And then I also ask it for a simple welcome phrase using an H2 tag. That's an optional thing. And I give it some perspective. What audience is going to be seeing this newsletter? Click continue here, click on test action. And here is our short little paragraph here. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter. Depends on how many articles are included in the actual news output. Click save here. Then we get down to the subject of the email. Go into the configuration. I'm using 4.0 here. So I give it information that the subject line should be less than 60 characters, including spaces, be descriptive, and limit punctuation. And then the content it's using to create the subject line is coming from the HTML output for the introduction and the news items themselves. Click continue here, click on test action, and it just says discover top marketing trends and creative insights this week. So we'll just click on save there. After our email subject line is done, we can then get into the Mailchimp steps. Now, the first step is to update a template, which means we already have a template created and it is updating it. And it is going to be updating it with dynamic content that we've introduced through ChatGPT, namely the news item, the introduction, the subject line, all the stuff that we just created in the previous steps. We want to put that into the HTML content of our template. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the first step in all of this is to create your template. Now the template's going to be HTML. If we go over to our templates in Mailchimp, to get started by creating a template, you'll click on Create Template. Important thing to mention here is that you're only going to be able to use the legacy builder if you do use themes or layouts or that type of thing. But I suggest that you start with Code Your Own. And if you need assistance for this, I can certainly help. Post your questions in the comments below, or you can go out and hire someone on Fiverr to create an HTML version of an email campaign, and you can use that as your template. You can also have the opportunity to import HTML. So if you don't want to paste in code, you could also do importing HTML. Those two options, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you are in your Mailchimp plan, is only for standard. Keep all of that in mind as we go forward. But if we click on paste in code, you'll see here we get a split screen of what our template will look like on the left and the HTML that's on the right. I didn't want to make this too complex, so all I did was I copied what was here and made tweaks to it over in OttokKit. So I literally just copied and pasted this code to start with. So if you want to start from scratch, start with what you've got here. All you need to do is click on Save and Exit. It will ask you to come up with a name. We'll call this Demo 2 and click Save. You'll be using this template to create your campaign, and I'll show you how all this works. So with our template created and our code copied, right, all that HTML code copied, I went over to our OttokKit step and made the API connection between Mailchimp and OttokKit. That's a requirement. So if you don't have that in, you got to create a new connection. Then click Continue. Now it's going to ask you for a template ID. The template ID, so you can see here we have Demo 2 and Demo. So it's just asking for what's the name of the template you want to use, that you want to update with the dynamic information that we're going to be putting in there from all of our ChatGPT. So how do we do this? So I copied and pasted in the code into template HTML content area here. I then made a few tweaks to this, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail here about it, but if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the comments below. The first thing I did was I changed out the title because it just said MC:subject in here and it was causing an error. I just put in the email subject line as the title of our template, and then I went in and changed the pre-header to the latest news in digital marketing. So I made that static. Then there's another option down here to that image that showed up in the template that just said insert your image here. I created a static image in Canva, downloaded it, and then uploaded it. And I just copied the full URL to the Content Studio where the image is and pasted it in there. Now, you could probably use ChatGPT and DALL-E to dynamically create an image every time, but I just went with a static one. Next thing I did was introduce our dynamic content. So we've got our welcome introduction, which is right here, and we've got our news items, which are right here. And when you go and edit your HTML, you want to have this body _content here because Mailchimp knows that that's where the bulk of your email goes in that section. So all I did was I just copied it and renamed it and put our welcome introduction here. And then I put in a horizontal rule between that and the start of our news items. And that's it. And everything else is exactly the same as it was in our generic template. So to test this out, we've just created Demo 2, right? So let's switch our template ID to Demo 2, and I'll show you how this works. And we'll just call this Demo 2 and click on Continue and click on Test Action. So our template that we just created, Demo 2, has now been updated with dynamically introduced content. So let me go take a look at that. So here's our Demo 2. right? That's the one we just set up. Let me just click on it and open it up. You'll now see that we've got all of the information from our ChatGPT setup in our template. Pretty cool, right? And it worked out very well. So once we have an updated template, we want to create a campaign from this template that we've just updated. So our next step is we'll just click on save here. And then the next step is to create the campaign. So if we click on create campaign, again, using that API connection, click continue. The campaign title is the email subject line. We selected our audience. I am using a welcome tag here because I found that I got better results if I use the segment versus not using a segment. So keep that in mind. You might have better results with sending it to everybody. The subject line that we created with ChatGPT, that's in there. The from and from email address is static, so no changes there. And then the template is the digital marketing news. Now let's change that to our demo 2. Right? So that's where we're going to be pulling that content in from that we just created in our template. It's then going to create a campaign from that template. Make sense? So we'll click on continue here and we'll click on test action. And then we'll go over to our Mailchimp campaigns and we'll see we have a new campaign created. Let me just refresh and you'll see here that it's in draft. If we open that up and click on edit design, you see here that we now have a campaign that was auto-generated based on our template. Make sense? And that's all that's doing right there. Pretty simple. And our last step, and it is highly optional. In fact, I wouldn't recommend doing this because AI makes mistakes, words get messed up. You don't want to send an email directly from this process, but you can if you're feeling bold. Let me just go in here and I'll show you how to set this up. Our event is send the campaign. Go into the configuration tab. It's grabbing the ID of the campaign that was just created in the previous step. So how do we do that? We just hit the add symbol there, scroll down here where it says create campaign, click the up arrow and select the ID that's right here. And you'll see that same ID right there. And we will just cancel out of that for now. So that's how you turn OttokKit, ChatGPT, and Mailchimp into your very own automated newsletter. Interested in learning more about OttokKit's automation features? Check out these videos right here, and I'll see you in the next video.